This is episode 2 for the idea sheets, and what I'm going to start off doing is showing you this scene right here and some tips for making that scene. I might not be exact, I don't do the same thing every time. There are 2 ways to get the overlap, and I'll start off with showing you masking. And when you mask, you always stamp what's in front first. So what's in front in this case is the flower pot. Then you would stamp your flower pot on another piece of paper and cut it out. Sometimes it's helpful if this is a post-it note because it doesn't go anywhere. You cover your flower pot and stamp your jar. And then you would do that again. I can pick up my mask, cover my jar, and there's my jars. And then the other option you have is you could stamp your flower pot. We'll pretend this one's clean, and you stamp a second one, cut it out, and just glue it next to it. That's actually my preferred choice, because then I can make sure my angles are all straight. Right now though, I'm just going to mask another one. Like that. I'm going to take some grass. Move my masks out of here. Make sure we anchor everything so it's not floating. It's all stamped in a quick drying pad for watercolors. And to color my flower pot, I'm going to start off with this nice soft golden orange color. And I'm using the side of the brush. And then here is a deeper red. What I'm going to do is tap my golden orange to my deeper red and just blend it off onto the flower pot. And you can make it as deep on the side as you want. You want to come back in with the deep red. And technically I should have flipped those too. To color my jars, I'm going to start off with this periwinkle blue color. And I'm not worrying about coloring the whole thing. There's the soft blue. I'm going to come in with a gray. There's my jars. And I want to anchor these a little bit. Adding a little bit of green to my grass. Back with the periwinkle blue, because you always want to have more than one tone. And I'm going to bring a little bit of green coming off that pot so it doesn't look like it's floating quite so much. And on this, I did flip them, masking. What I could do to an easy fix is to stamp a second, or stamp one and then just glue it over the top. A little bit of dirt. And then I'm going to add a little bit of humor to this. I'm going to take my dorky bird. He's a bird of very big heart and very little brain. And I'm going to stamp him in a black ink pad. Cover up my flower pot. And there's your dorky bird hanging outside the pot. You want to get a little more carried away. Maybe you can have another one there who fell in the grass. To color these guys, take my yellow. And grab that golden orange again. Tap my yellow to my golden orange. I'm going to take the golden orange and give him a little bit of cheeks, just so he looks alive. Before I stamp the flowers and foliages in the jars and the pots, I'm going to add my gray shadows now. This is just a soft gray shadow, and all it does is pop things a little bit. So I have that. And I'm going to take, and you can cover anything on the idea sheet. I have this stamp coming out of a flower pot. This time I'm going to have it come out of a jar. I'll use my Hunter green ink. It's kind of noisy when I ink it. It's just a hint. I'm going to stamp it off to the side just to make sure I have it inked. And there's my foliage in my jar. If you want, you can make it fuller by stamping it a second time. Do that. And I'm going to take my sprig, which is this thing. This time I'm going to put this one in the flower pot. Do that. I'm actually going to have one that ran away down there, so there's my sprig in my flower pot. And I'm going to take some little stamps, my snowflake, and I always make sure I clean it off before I use it, in case I didn't remember to do that the last time. Just tap, 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 tap. Take a few, stamp them a little bit bolder, squashing it down to the page. That. And I'm going to take my little solid stick flower. Actually, that's not the one on the idea sheet. It's the brush flower. And I'm going to go in the purples. Some of those, and then I'm going to take my dots in blue, just lightly add some dots in here. Now on the idea sheet there is one more little step of humor, and we have him down here. It's a little snail. But if you look at any of our images, you will notice we don't have a snail. What we have is a swirl. And I'll just show you another spot, and I would cut this out and put it in there so it popped. I'm going to take my little swirl. There it is. And I'm going to take my little fine line pen, put kind of a weird little triangle. Give him a little tail, and there's your little snail. And then you just color him snail kind of colors. even though he's little, always got to give him life by adding some pink cheeks. The second thing I'm going to show you on episode 2 is the Garland using the Sprig. So here's the Sprig and the Hunter Green ink. And it has, again, a little bit of a curve. Do that. And a quick side note, this isn't on the idea sheet, but you can do the same thing. There's a half garland, continue around in a circle, and there's your wreath going back on top the opposite direction. It's basically 2 halves of a garland put together. Oops, forgot to go back the opposite direction. There we go, there's our garland. Rainbow ink pad, which is the best thing for all the sticks and stubbies. And we have our bold flower. And one more. Okay. I want to pull the color around the wreath, so we're going to use the little stick, solid flower. And then the 3 leaves stubby, solid 3 leaves stubby. And the last step is the dots. Remember, if you have a hard time stamping them too heavily, stamp off on a piece of paper and use the second generation of ink. And there's your garland. The third idea on episode 2 is the frame using the Sprig, and the easiest way to create this nice mask is a post-it note. Sticky, then you don't have to worry about it jumping around. And my Sprig, Hunter Green ink. And this really shouldn't take that long to do. I stamp off multiple times before I re-ink so I get dimension. Okay, go all the way around. Post-it note away, and there's your nice clean edge to your frame. Then I'm going to take some little flowers, tinier than even the ones on the stick, but there's 3 of them on here. I'm going to put just some little clusters of flowers. This is a little bit lighter right now than the one that's on the idea sheet. If you want to make it a little bolder, the one on the idea sheet, I took the Tombow watercolor markers and just quickly dashed little swipes of green. You can do this before or after you add the flowers. It does change the look of it a little bit. Blue. And if there's some areas that aren't bold enough and you wanted more sprigs, it's an easy fix. Do one more color on here and then I'll show you how to add a few extra sprigs to pop it. A little bit of brown. Okay, so if you wanted a few more sprigs, you take your fancy tool, put it back in there. Oops, actually this way. And you can come back with your sprig. You determined you needed it a little more weedy. Like that. Next thing, once you have it as full and weedy as you need, I'm going to take the fade out leaf, and not all the leaves have to be to the outside of the frame. There we go. Got my leaves on there. Now I need my dots. Dots in blue. I'm going to do them mainly on the outside of the wreath, or the frame, excuse me. Okay. That. And if you look at the idea sheet, well, you'll notice there's a place photo here stamp, which is a great idea if you're giving scrapbook pages and things as gifts. But this little box is actually just done with a fine line pen, and I come back at this point and do it. And I take my pen, and I cannot draw a straight line even with a ruler, so I do a little bit of a wobbly line, and then I come back and do a second wobbly line. And I actually turn it so I don't drag my hand through it. And the reason I do two wobbly lines is because if you only do one and you wobble it a little too much, it will look like a mistake. If you do two and wobble one too much, how do you know which one was the extra wobbly one? So there's your frame. Idea 4 on the episode 2 sheet is this twig wreath, which is the same twiggy branch that's in the flower pot, which you might think would be too big for a wreath, but stamping 5 or 6 times makes a nice wreath, and it's easy to do if you stamp it 5 or 6 times and just methodically count it out. So you get 1, and you can stamp it in green or black, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, I would not recommend turning this around and going back the opposite direction because it gets too heavy and too many branches and too muddled. Even though I stamped this one in green, the one in the idea sheet is in black, I'm still going to add a few marker colors. So I have my green, and a little bit of the blue, you can again see how fast I'm coloring. A little bit of brown. Like that. And then I'm going to add my flowers. The bold daisy. And again, to keep the colors from being quite so isolated, I'm going to grab this solid flower, if I can figure out where I dropped it, right here. And then the fade out leaf. And there's your wreath. I want to show you a few extra ideas that aren't on here using this leaf right here. You may not think that that has a whole lot of extra things, but it does. You can take that little 3-leaf stamp, create a tree spine, branch it out as you go up, tilt it in, stamp it off a little bit, and there's a nice little tree. Take the same stamp, and I'm going to just follow it around in a circle. If you want, you can go back on top the opposite direction. And there's a wreath. So I'm going to take my pen, do some fancy little ground scribbles, my hunter green ink, do that, and grab a little flower of some sort. This is the solid flower. Put a few solid flowers on there. Take your pen, put some pokies. And there's your cactus. Right now it's still kind of floating. There we go. Some ground. And then we're going to get a little carried away with that same stamp. I'm going to switch over to the blues and the purples. Turn it one way. Create a little plus sign. Start branching it out on the angles. I do this very methodically. And there you have a pretty snowflake out of that same little solid 3-leaf stick. Thanks for watching this episode of our Idea Sheet instructional videos. Be sure to go to our website at Stampsbyjudith.com and check out other cards, ideas, and videos and see what else you can create with what you have of our images. Thanks!